Good morning, council members, staff, and members of the public. It is Tuesday, July 21st, and I'd like to call this meeting of the Policy and Strategy Committee to order and begin by acknowledging that we are Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We have regrets today from Councillor Moore, and Councillor DeLong will be joining us shortly. She is delayed at the moment. At this time, we'll ask if there's any announcements, acknowledgements, or recognition from council members. Councillor Smith.
Thanks. I just wanted to mention the launch event for Indian Falls over the weekend, and the mayor gave some remarks, and Deputy Mayor Vino was there as well. It was a really great day. And just as a way of acknowledging the work and the impact of the accessibility upgrades, I won't touch on the art project at the moment, but the accessibility upgrades, I just wanted to tell a little brief anecdote. I was speaking with Ellen Johnston, our accessibility coordinator, before the event, and asking her about her thoughts on the upgrades, and she pointed out a few things, and she said, well, you know, the one thing that I think not many people will appreciate that makes a huge difference is this dip on the trail that's been filled in. The grade had been leveled, and was going to make it so much easier for people with disabilities to navigate that trail. And I thanked her for her feedback, and truly, it wasn't the one I heard a lot about. I heard a lot about the bathrooms, about the picnic tables, the look-off, but the grade itself wasn't really spoken about. And then after the event, Deputy Chief Stephen Frank from the Cornwall Fire Department came to the park. It was his first time seeing the upgrades. And I said, what do you think? And he said it's amazing. And his eyes went straight to the dip in the trail that had been filled in. And he said, you know, we've been to 10 different emergencies in this park, and I can tell you taking a stretcher over that dip in the trail was very, very difficult. And it just really sent home to me the impact of accessibility upgrades. We often talk about how improvements with accessibility don't just impact people with disabilities. Accessibility upgrades improve public spaces for everyone. And that comment about emergency services and accessibility upgrades coming together really brought that home for me. And I was really delighted to be able to call Ellen over and have her hear that herself. But that's just one little anecdote to pass along the impact, and to say thank you for everyone who made those upgrades happen, including the previous council who got the work started. So thank you.
Don't see any other speakers, so we'll move down in the agenda to public input. Is there anybody here that wishes to speak at public input today? Seeing none, a public input for those that might be listening is an opportunity for you to come before council and share any concerns, questions, or ideas you might have with council, and we always encourage members to attend. Are there any changes to the agenda before we seek approval? Seeing none, can I have somebody move the agenda? Moved by Mayor McLean-Weil, seconded by Councillor Oikel. All those in favor? Agenda is approved as circulated. We have one set of minutes to approve, June 16th, 2026. Are there any corrections needed before approving those minutes? Seeing none, I'll call those minutes approved. There's no business arising from the minutes today, so we're going to go right into our first presentation of the morning. And we have the Riverport Connector Project, and we have speakers Annabelle Westall, the Executive Director, and Robert Mayer, Board Member with the Kingsburg Coastal Conservancy. And I would invite you both to come up to the podium and share your presentation with Council. Good morning. So as we're getting that, feel free to raise the podium so the mic is closer, so we can pick up everything you're saying, and those can come back and listen to it if they wish.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for including us in your agenda. As you know, we're from the Kingsburg Coastal Conservancy, which is based in Kingsburg, Nova Scotia, and we're really excited to talk to you today about the Riverport Connector Project, which is a project the Kingsburg Coastal Conservancy has been working on for a few years, but we're just starting to do outreach and publicize the ideas for the project a little bit and try to get community feedback and support. So as part of that, we have talked to the Riverport Community Park and have their endorsement, and we've also talked to the Indian Path Commons Advisory Committee and also have their endorsement, and we're very excited to work with both these groups because they're doing amazing things for that community, and we think that this project can be part of that. My name is Annabelle Westall. I'm the Executive Director. I started with the KCC this past March. Before that, I worked in research science, and I've worked for Environment and Climate Change Canada, the Department of Fisheries, and also NOAA down in the US. But I have a long history of being in Halifax and Kingsburg. I went to Dalhousie University, and I had family living in Kingsburg for the past 25 years. So I've been coming my whole life, and it's a very special area, and I'm very excited to be working for the KCC. So now I'll let Rob Meyer introduce himself.
Hello, good morning, and again, thanks for having us. I am on the KCC board. I'm a board member and a recent one. I think both of us are recent to the group. I've been there for a little over a year. And my background, I'd like to say a little bit about me. I grew up in Manitoba. I got a bachelor's degree there after a few years of construction work. Moved to Dalhousie, got my architecture degree, and have worked in Nova Scotia initially and in the United States, New England area for 23 years. Worked in Los Angeles, New York, and other interesting places. And about 3.5 years ago, moved back to Nova Scotia and got into the KCA, that's the Kingsburg Community Association, so to get involved in the community. I'm recently in the KCC, and I'm also the chair of the Riverport District Fire Commission. I just mention all these things. I think we're like-minded in that we care about our communities and volunteerism, and having been in the U.S. as a non-citizen for over 20 years, you have a pent-up demand to actually participate, and couldn't really do that there, couldn't vote, and so on. So I think we're embracing our communities here, and we're excited about it. Just some quick accomplishments. I have a small architectural firm in Kingsburg, just two people. But since being here as commissioner, we actually 2 days ago got our first dry hydrant, the first and only one in the district. That's operational. Speaking of accessibility, the fire department applied for an accessibility grant. We didn't get it, which was troubling, but we said, let's do it anyways, and I did the designs for accessible bathrooms and ramps, etc., hand grips, railing, all that stuff, and we upgraded our fire station because we have all those breakfasts, community functions, so we did that. I saw one of our local businesses in Riverport was having trouble complying with codes, so I met with the building department and we worked out solutions. This is at the Confidence Lodge, so I helped those folks get their occupancy just by having an intelligent dialogue with the building department, because everyone wants to succeed, and it's just about dialogue and finding answers. So I feel good about those accomplishments, and I'd like to talk more about the project we're here for, and that is, we're calling it the Connector because we haven't found a nifty name for it yet, and we'll get to that. But it is, when I joined the board, I was new to it, and I wanted to know, what do we have? And, oh, can we flip this thing here? We have,
So do you want me to?
oh, yeah,
I'll do
go to
this
that,
first.
and
Okay.
then, yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, so a little bit about the Kingsburg Coastal Conservancy. It's a member-founded, community-run volunteer group based in Kingsburg. It's a registered charity. They founded in 1995 to protect Kingsburg Beach, and since then have a 30-year track record in land conservation and advocacy. We steward over 600 acres, including the Gaff Point Trail, the Gaff Point Public Trail, and many other valuable conservation lands, including a lot of wetlands in the area. Ongoing work includes land conservation and stewardship, promoting community access to coastal areas, environmental monitoring, and providing benefits to the community. So our goals for this Riverport Connector project, which Rob's going to tell you a lot more about at this point, because we're early in the project, are to inform community groups, interested parties, and potential partners about the project and our plans, discover, so seek input, guidance, support, expertise from the community and beyond, develop active partnerships and connect with people who want to be involved going forward. We're, of course, in the stage of also acquiring resources and funding to develop and maintain public access to this area. And our primary goal is to ensure that this benefits the community and has support from the community and is a sustainable project, both for our organization and also for the Riverport community and beyond.
Here we go. Specific to the project, when I first joined the board, I didn't know much about it. And the first thing I needed to know is, what do we have? And we had someone prepare a graphic that showed all the properties that the group owns, and some that we partner with and some that are shared. And that, where's the driver here?
If we just click here, it'll go down.
Okay. And this graphic shows color-coded the properties we own, the ones that we partner with, the ones that are shared. And it looked a bit disparate, scattered, and then, we looked more closely at this. And what you see here is there's West Ironbound highlighted and Gaff Point, and those are successful partnerships with other groups. So by partnering with these other groups, what do you say, the whole exceeds the sum of the parts. And we have these great recreational and natural assets here. And then furthermore, then we studied, we had a series of properties up in Riverport, but they were disconnected. If you look at the dotted line on the map, at the top of the map, they're disconnected. Going like, let's see, what's going on here? And before that, we kind of did just kind of a analysis, a community analysis. And we realized, look, there's Indian Path Commons over there. There's Sand Dollar Beach. There's the community park, the emerging community park. There's the ferry, Fort Point, Hurdle Beach, Gaff, the Ovens. So there are all these fantastic community features. And we realized, if we managed to link up our properties, and we could link them up with the other ones, we could kind of have this connector or this community linkages, which I think would benefit, and there'd be synergy with all these other groups. So that excited us. This graphic shows our completed path system in the dark green. Before we started, we had, how do I go back? Oh, in the middle. If we could zoom in that far corner, we have some gaps in there. And then we go back, oops. This is not my car. So here we managed to complete a contiguous set of properties, but when we started, there were gaps. And we decided if we could fill in those gaps, we could create this potential linkage. And then we met with the Riverport Park people because they've done a lot of work and they have a lot of energy. And we thought, let's meet with them before and tell them what we're thinking to make sure we don't throw them off and step on their toes because they have a very careful project. And we didn't want to kind of go in there without them knowing what we're thinking of doing. And we explained it, and they actually were positive to it. So we actually went and cold called on the 2 parcels, and we managed to actually acquire those 2 parcels last year before one of our grants expired, and we pulled it off. What we like about this is with these other partners or assets, Indian Path and the Riverport Park, they both have parking, they both have toilets, and we don't want to get in the toilet business. So we thought, like, we can share these assets, and back to the Riverport Park, they also have accessible trails in their plan, and it's more family-based and age-based for multiple ages. If we could link to that, then those trails could extend onto our lands and become more, whatever, wild or natural, and so that would broaden the appeal of that park, and Indian Path is doing a great job. So if we could link them into it, I think we're growing a bigger community asset. As Annabelle said, we're into transparency, and we met with the Indian Path folks, the KCA, the LaHave Coastal, the Riverport Park people, and part of our goal, we're calling this our discovery tour, we're looking for partners, we're looking for expertise, we're looking for volunteers. For instance, LaHave Coastal has a lot of forestry experts. And some of our properties, which Annabelle has an intern, it's being evaluated from ecological way, the character of the land and so on. And we know there's some clear cuts, and there's some of these lands are actually scarred up. And so, for example, LaHave Coastal has forestry expertise. We can pull them in, they could help advise us towards remediating and fixing some of our properties. We have also, can we go one more, please? We are building community support. So we did listen to all these other groups. We are creating an advisory group, and they've all agreed to provide a member from their boards or group memberships to sit on our board. We're still working on what this advisory group will do in its composition, but it's in our plan. And we also had these meetings with all of these folks to find out concerns, and the big ones being ATVs and hunting. And our goal is not to get into a culture war against other groups like ATVs and hunting, so we want to coexist and manage that. I think it's telling us ATVs, let's let them keep their trails and not restrict them from our land, but we'll manage our trails so they have different users instead of trying to resist them. I think that's a negative effort. Same with hunting. Hunting has been going on here forever, and we'll, instead of posting no hunting and so on, we'll probably do a signage effort telling the users when the seasons are, when to be careful, when, you know, and so on. So we're thinking about that. And we have been getting funds just on this project, actually. There's a family foundation, the Fulcher Foundation, actually gave us some money to complete the acquisitions, and then there's a partial tranche to start the development of it. And we have, Annabelle just signed a trail consultant this week, and he's actually walking the lands today. So we're moving ahead with more discovery, more learning about what we have before we make moves. And I think we'll probably end up phasing this as we get the funds and expertise and know the land better. And we do show a kind of a trail with 2 axes. I think we can probably do the first phase that goes over our lands. And the other one you may have noticed is an axis from Rose Bay up Fish Peddler Road to the Indian Path. That's there's one more hurdle there, and that is to deal with the province, because that's provincial road, even though it's not a road at the moment. But I think that makes sense. I think there's more work there with meeting organizations. So that's probably going to be a second phase. Those are our intentions. So yes, we've done the engagement. We're looking and supporting like-minded groups and partnerships. We're looking at creating the advisory group. We are currently doing site monitoring. What I like about the KCC is, you know, the word conservation is always, people get this connotation, we're just taking land away and tucking it in a box. But especially in this project, we want it to be public. We want the public access. I think we know about West Ironbound and Gaff Point. They have challenges. They're hard to reach, and sometimes you stumble over private property. This would be much more accessible to everyone. So that's what's different about this and exciting about it. We're looking for expertise. We're looking for volunteers and members, and of course, money, fundraising. So I think that's our tour, and you probably have some more words to.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. That was great. Yeah, I think I just want to say as Rob said, we're in the discovery phase, which is why we're presenting here today, because we're really looking for feedback. What parts of this project are interesting? What parts do we need to keep thinking about? If we organize a community meeting at some point, you know, we'll be looking for feedback on people who host those kinds of meetings and the most productive, effective way to do that. Also, just keep us in mind if there are any partnership opportunities or funding opportunities that we maybe should be aware of to help this project make progress. But overall, we just think it's going to be really exciting. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback from everyone we've talked to, and we're really hoping to make this a valuable community resource. Thank you.
Thank you both for the presentation. Are you open for questions if there's any from council members? Okay. Councillor Oikle.
It's a wonderful project, and I have actually, with the Lunenburg hikers, gone from the Indian Path down Fish Peddlers Road. And you mentioned that it'll be accessible to everyone. Does that mean that you're considering your path to be an accessible path, or will it be a natural path? Because, you know, you might want to consider the terms you're using if it's only going to remain in its natural state and just be lots of roots and rocks and whatever.
So yeah, the accessible term, it kind of slides around. I mean, the code of accessibility is very precise. And I think you were talking about the proper grades and slopes of accessibility and the textures. These will be natural paths with some grooming and boardwalks and so on. That's in our planning stage. We have a consultant now that will give us recommendations. But some of this land goes quite up a grade, and it's beautiful and mossy, and there's brooks. I mean, it's not accessible in that manner. It's not, you know, you can't take a walker or be mobility impaired. But that's what's exciting about the Riverport Community Park, because they will be doing that. And so this way, we're sharing the range of abilities by hooking up with them. So, as you know, Fish Peddlers Road isn't even accessible by a vehicle, right? So, let alone. So, do you have any thoughts on that, or?
Yeah, no, that's a great point, but yeah, as Rob said, these are going to be quite natural trails because we are balancing conservation and minimizing impact with access, so we're always having to keep those two things in mind. So as valuable as it is to create accessible trails that are wide and have, a very reasonable grade, that means a lot of impact on the environment. So yeah, that's not a priority at the moment, but as Rob said, the Riverport Community Park is going to have a small trail system, and we're going to directly connect to that. And again, this depends on what our consultant says. He's also an environmental expert, so he's going to help us limit impact, and also our funding. But I'm really hoping that the start of the trail off of the Riverport Community Park will be as accessible as possible, so good for children, so that people in the park can maybe do a little loop of our trail, and it's not as challenging, and it's wider and maybe a little more gently sloped. But then as you get further into our 100 kilometers, it will become more natural and a little more challenging.
And also, so one more point, also, we understand the more accessible path that's gravelled and graded and wide is more of, we're trying to, based on the other group, want to discourage that because that draws the ATVers on it. So we're learning that to make the trails more pedestrian and bike-friendly and less ATV, they need to be less exciting to folks on quicker vehicles, so you have rocks and trees, and it has to be more organic to restrict them, So we're learning about this.
Mayor McLean-Weil.
I'm glad you brought up the issue with all-terrain vehicles, because they're growing in size. Just my kind of observation is that many have gone to side-by-side vehicles, which are large, and even an ATV on a trail, presents issues. But I'm not sure in that area, are there some kind of historic, natural spots that ATVers and side-by-sides are already using there? Okay.
Yeah, we've heard that there are existing ATV trails through the lands.
So our thought is we could keep those and not resist them, and then we'll do our trails as an overlay and kind of keep them from jumping on the trail, which will be more pedestrian and organic in that.
Right. So I think those become the public engagement pieces that become really important, because I think what we hear from people is that historic natural use of areas that have a long history of whatever the use may be, whether it's pedestrian or vehicle, disrupting that pattern can sometimes be a red flag for everybody and creates opposition when you're just trying to work through it. So I think those kind of discussions become really important in moving forward, preserving, as I have said repeatedly, preserving what we love about the area we live, but recognizing that we need to think about the future and those that may not want to use those kind of vehicles. And the other thing is recognizing that here the tradition of hunting, fishing, ATV use is extensive. It's built into the culture here, and we have to balance that with those that would rather choose a more quiet use of the natural resource that we have. So there is a balance there that sometimes can be challenging, but I think we have, lots of experience in how you can do that effectively. And I think those conversations sometimes are lengthy and need to be framed in the right way in order to create that broad use of the natural environment that we have. So I'm pleased to hear there's recognition of that, and I think that will be really important going forward.
Thank you. Yeah, no, we have recognized that too with our meetings with groups, and kind of understanding this too. I was a young man, I used to hunt too, a long time ago. And that's why I said we don't want to get into culture war. We don't want to be this group that's blocking use because we know better than other people. So we want to coexist and make that work. And any thoughts we can get towards that end is valuable to us.
If I may, don't like to put her on the spot, but our Director of Parks, Recreation, and Tourism, Trudy Payne, has a lifetime of experience in public engagement and parks and recreation facilities, and has a deep understanding of the culture here, and experience working with our trail groups, who are volunteer groups that partner with the municipality to maintain those trails. So I would say that she can offer you, not that I'm trying to direct her to do something, but I'm just making sure that you're aware of her expertise in this, and can be quite helpful in planning out that public engagement discussion piece that will be really important in the development of this project. So
Thank you, yeah, that's excellent.
Yeah, we've met with Trudy, and we'll definitely seek guidance on public engagement and addressing any issues like that. And we didn't really touch on it, but we're also reaching out to our other partners, like the Nature Conservancy of Canada and the Nova Scotia Nature Trust. So we've already met with them and told them about this project, and again, sought their input because they develop trails. For NCC, it's all over Canada. For the Nova Scotia Nature Trust, it's all over Nova Scotia. So we're also looking for their insights, and everybody has touched on these issues and in the same way about hunting and ATVs and safety. So it's great. We're getting the same sort of feedback again and again, which just reinforces this is something we really have to think carefully about and plan for.
And we met with the gun club, and they're also sensitive to that because, that's a sport or activity that can be a lightning rod.
Mr. Mayor, can I just get you to come forward, just so that we get you on the mic? Thank you.
I'm sorry. Yeah, we met with the gun club, and they are very sensitive to these issues too, because, especially sensitive because there is also, there's a lot of people that don't want them to be there and so on. But we met with the Indian Path folks. They are coexisting very nicely. They had good things to say about them, and we met with them. And so I think there's a lot of good energy already there, and we just want to make sure we're addressing everyone's concerns and don't want to miss anyone.
Sounds like you've done your research and got some good key partners on the outside of this potential connector. And if there's no further comments or questions, perhaps next time we see you will be to let us know how great the project went, and we'll start promoting that. So thank you both for your presentation here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect.
And I have some materials from our public, what we shared with the public, so I thought I might just keep them here.
Yeah, and the council members can grab it then following the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Our next presentation is until 10:15, so we'll move down, we'll move down in our agenda and skip over referral from council, as there's none today. So we'll begin with staff reports. And up first, we have the Recreation, Parks, and Tourism Department, and we have our Pro Kids and Pro Fund 2025-2026 recap, and we have Tessie Bolivar, who will present that here today.
Once I figure out how. Not that tall. So I just unplug this. Oops, I just added a slide. Delete. I think I'm good. As good as I'll be. That's all I am. Feels so far away. There I am. Perfect. I'm here just to go over our 2025-2026 Pro Fund and Pro Kids program. What we funded, how much we funded, and yeah, a little bit of the demographics. So just as a reminder, our Pro Kids program stands for Positive Recreation Opportunities for Kids, and it's a financial assistance program that provides youth in the municipality of the District of Lunenburg financial assistance to participate in recreation, sports, and cultural activities who otherwise may not be able to because of financial reasons. So in 2025-2026, you can see here our top 5 funded activities by recipients. So music was our #1 funded program with 102 recipients, totaling nearly $28,000. Dance was our second at 62 recipients, and then camps and day courses, followed by gymnastics and horseback riding. So I did put the comparison for 2024-2025 in there, just so you can see the growth over the year. So those top 5 funded activities accounted for 260 total recipients, total applications, I should say, out of 462. So that equates to about $66,690 funded in those top 5 activities out of a total of 104.5 and change that we funded total in the program. So this is just a breakdown by age group. So we broke it into 3 age groups just for ease of consumption. So 0 to 4-year-olds, we funded 11, 5 to 12, 154, and 13 to 18, 47, for a total of 212 individual applicants. So as you can see, that number differs from the previous slide, which had 460 total applications we approved. So 460 applications were approved, but that equates to 212 unique individuals that we funded. Because individuals can apply once per season, we have a lot of kids that will apply up to 4 times a year. So that kind of makes up that difference. Hopefully that makes sense. And you can see the growth from 2024, 2025 to 2025, 2026. So we funded 205 individuals and then 200. Is that me? Breaking the place. We had added in 2024, 2025 a few questions.
Where there's somebody on staff that's just listening, and there's difficulty hearing with the mic today. So maybe we'll try raising the desk a little
Raise the
bit.
desk?
If it's being temperamental today. Thank you.
I'll try to come this way. I'm going to turn this way. Hopefully they can hear me a little bit better. So like I said, in 2024, 2025, we added, now I feel really loud, added some questions on our application form around underrepresented communities so we can kind of gauge the applicants that are applying for the program. So the 3 questions that we added were if the applicant identifies as belonging to a visible minority group, if they identify as belonging to the 2S LGBTQIA+ community, and if they identify as a person with a disability. So you can see the breakdown there. We had 33 applicants respond to those questions. They do not have to. It's completely voluntary on the application form, but you can see the breakdown there. Then we broke it down by district for you. So we funded the most applicants in 2025, 2026 in District 1, followed by District 8 and District 5, and the least in District 4. I'll also note that at the bottom, it does say Mahone Bay. In 2024, 2025, we did fund residents of the town of Mahone Bay, but the town of Mahone Bay reimbursed us for those. We just administered it for them, but we're no longer doing that for them. So you can see the 0 for this year. This was just some of the testimonials that we've gotten back from our Pro Kids program last year. Obviously, there's a lot of thanks and gratitude for the applicants and who receive funding from this program. So then if we look at our Pro Fund program, so exact same model as Pro Kids, but this program is specifically for adults in the municipality of the District of Lunenburg. So the top 3 activities that we funded in 2025, 2026, number 1 being membership. So whether that's an LCLC, YMCA, 902 Athletics, those are kind of the most popular memberships that we fund. Music was number 2, and miscellaneous sport was number 3. And things in miscellaneous sports are things like Pilates, curling, pickleball, horseback riding, are some of those examples. So out of those top 3, that equated to 22 of the total applications that we funded, out of 33 in total. So a high percentage of them in the top 3. As you can see, we funded $14,211.33 total out of our Pro Fund program last year. And again, here's just a breakdown of the age groups, demographics that we funded out of this program. The majority were in the 25 to 34 range, followed by the 35 to 44 range. Same questions as we have on our Pro Kids. We had 4 identifying as a person with a disability on our 2025-2026 applications. And breakdown by district. District 8 had the highest amount of recipients, followed by District 5. And there's one of the testimonials from our Pro Fund program. And that is the end of my recap. Open to questions.
I actually really look forward to when this comes forward every year because it really puts things in perspective. At budget time, we throw out a number, but it's when you come and present that we get the meaningfulness behind that number. So thank you for that. Questions or comments for Tissy? Counselor Smith?
Yeah, just looking at the breakdown of recipients by district.
Pro Kids or Pro Fund?
I'm looking at Pro Kids.
Okay.
I wonder if you could comment on, the difference between districts in uptake of the program. And I guess some questions that I have are really, why is the program used less in some areas? And is it around general barriers to recreation? Is it around lack of awareness about the program? Or is it about eligibility of the programs that people can apply for? For example, you might not have as much, say I'm just thinking about District 6. You may have more private lessons or recreation that is not by a recognized program or organization. So say you're taking piano lessons and it's from your neighbor. You're not driving all the way to, say, a provider in Mahone Bay or something.
Right.
Anyway, I just threw a lot at you, but I just wondered if you could comment on maybe why we see the low numbers in some areas as opposed to others.
Just to kind of touch on the last point you had mentioned about certain providers, and we do fund, it doesn't have to be a recognized organization or business that we do fund. So we do, especially with music, we do have a lot of kind of private individual instructors that are teaching music that we do fund lessons and programs with them as well. As for why we see kind of the differences in the different communities, short of kind of looking at the demographic breakdowns of each community or each district, I can see that maybe perhaps some districts have a lower youth population, which is a reason that I could see as a potential. But other than that, it would be really hard for me to kind of speculate why we see some in higher areas.
Mayor McLean Weil?
Yeah, and my question was around the percentage, when you look at the slide in Pro Kids on breakdown of underrepresented communities, and the number, and so when you look at the numbers, it's about 15% of the total have answered that question. Do you have any sense of what number did not answer that question, and how representative that number is in terms of that sector?
Yeah, so out of the 212 total individuals, 33 responded to those questions. So if someone wants to math that, the percentage, yeah. Yep.
Counselor DeLong.
Yeah, just kind of jumping off Counselor Smith. Does it look like districts that are geographically further away and therefore potentially transportation is a barrier, does it look like there's less access in those districts?
I wouldn't say so because, I mean, if I'm looking at even say District 5,
Yeah.
they're pretty rural, and they're in the top 3 most requested.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Do we offer any kind of reimbursement for transportation to,
It is something that we do say that we will consider if that is a barrier for them.
Okay,
It hasn't
great.
come forward as an identified barrier,
Yeah.
and when we do, especially when we do our reference checks, we do ask, like, are there any other barriers that you foresee this family facing? And sometimes we do talk about transportation, and then they say if the family hasn't identified it, then they've probably worked it out, but.
okay, that's awesome, thank you.
Trudy, did you have anything additional you wanted to add on any of the questions?
I just think to respond, I think, to what the mayor was asking, unless they self-identify, there's probably no other way of us knowing if that number should be higher or not, unless we know the folks personally. Because it's an option. They don't have to, self-identify if they don't want to. But it is completely confidential, but still, putting that on a form might be a barrier in and of itself for some folks.
Any further questions? Oh, seeing none, thank you for this year's recap.
See you next year.
We'll move down to item 9.2, administration, and 9.2.1, community development, a discussion guide for project assessment. And we have policy and analysts Shannon and Quan Ki that is going to present this here for us today. We'll take a moment and let you get set up.
Good morning, everyone. Last month, Quan Ki and I presented on the topic of community development. One of the suggestions from that presentation was to develop a list of criteria that council could use when assessing requests for community support for projects. So this community development staff working group has drafted some criteria, which we're sharing today in the form of a discussion guide. And I've passed around the discussion guide. We'll get into those details later, just so you have a little bit of time to review. But to start, we'll briefly explain the rationale behind the discussion guide, walk through the main themes, and then have time for feedback.
Having a pre-established discussion guide help anchor council's discussion on project with a consistent approach that align with the community development's principles. For example, the community group Riverport and District Community Park Association approached the council a few years ago to keep an old school ground as a community space. If there are similar project proposals being brought to the council in the future, council will be able to discuss and review the different projects consistently while adhering to the set of the same community development principles. The guideline was developed based on 11 principles identified in the 2004 Nova Scotia Community Development Policy. We also identified the themes like community needs and interests, inclusive participation, and long-term sustainability from literatures outside of the policy and incorporated them into the discussion guideline.
The intent of the discussion guide is to provide council with a flexible framework for considering community projects, such as the presentation we just saw from the KCC, just to have hopefully something to bring the discussion back to and just help keep these community development priorities like top of mind as you have discussions. As a reference point to consider overall benefit, readiness, long-term impact of a project. And this brings us to the discussion guide itself. So we've identified 5 broad themes that could be used when assessing these requests for municipal support. The first theme is community leadership and collaboration. This looks at the extent to which a project is driven and supported by the community itself through a bottom-up approach. Second theme is alignment and need. This focuses on whether a project responds to a demonstrated community need and whether it aligns with municipal strategic priorities. Similarly, the impact theme considers how effectively the project would address the identified need. The fourth theme is inclusiveness and community building. This looks at how a project contributes to community connections and existing volunteer strengths, while also considering factors such as accessibility and inclusion. And finally, sustainability and balance considers the longer-term viability of a project and whether it reflects a balanced approach across social, economic, environmental, and recreational considerations. As council considers community project requests, the discussion guide can be used alongside the strategic priorities to help focus discussions. And the guide can just help provide a community development lens, while strategic priorities help identify how projects support council's broader goals and objectives. Together, we hope they can support consistent and informed decision-making.
For the next step, we will incorporate feedback from the council into the discussion guide refinement process, and we will then develop the implementation process and will return council with the final framework. And here is our proposed discussion guide. As a reminder, the discussion guide will help council in looking into aspects of the individual project proposal forward by the community groups with their perspective of community development principles. And we would like to have feedback from you. For example, if there are any themes that the council feel are missing, if there are any themes you would like to see refinements, or if there are any themes on the guide should be removed. And we are open for having feedback from all of you. With that, we are opening the floor for discussion now.
Okay, thank you. So quick recap of what was in our agenda package, and now would be the time to comment or ask any questions on what's been presented. Mayor McLean-Weil.
Thank you for the presentation. A few comments. When I think about a guide, I think about councils of now, but also councils of the future, and how this could be a tool used by them and us to work on projects. And I think one of the things, when I went back and looked at the provincial community development policy that was developed in 2004, there was a piece at the very beginning which I think would be a very important addition to a guide, which sets out the principles of community development. And I think we've discussed community development and explored it, but I think for future councils, there will be a need to reaffirm what that actually means. And when I read through those principles, I thought it was a really good addition to a discussion guide that sets out the principles. The second thing that I'd like to comment on is that one of the things that we have had a lot of discussion about here has been the development and support of the volunteer sector. And I feel like it's here kind of subliminally, but maybe not as evident as it should be in aligning the thinking around what we're trying to accomplish here. So I'm not sure whether it's under community leadership, but I think a recognition of support for development and of the volunteer sector needs to be quite explicitly stated. And it's here, but it's not maybe as evident as what it should be based on our recognition of how critical that is to continuing to have strong communities and maintain the things that make all of our communities rich, is that we have many volunteers contributing to it. And the second point is, because I keep coming back to our trails, we in the municipality could never afford to maintain the trails that we have now if we did not have that volunteer sector doing what they do. So I think it's a really important addition here to highlight that in how we assess some of these projects.
And our Deputy CAO will speak next.
Thank you for the comments, Madam Mayor. I'm just looking for a little bit of clarity around volunteerism. Certainly it's critical as a component to community development. Are you looking to have included in the discussion guide an assessment of whether or not the project itself supports volunteerism, or more an assessment of how well does the proposal understand the demands on volunteers and how well equipped they are to achieve that?
I think it's both.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor DeLong.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I understand who's using this, and if it was written in your report and I missed it, I'm sorry. Is this intended to be an internal-facing document, external, or both? Like, are we using this in terms of how we speak to community groups, or are we also giving this to community groups so that they have a guideline in how they might want to approach us?
My understanding would be more internal for your own decision-making and discussion, but I don't know how that would work if it's something that needs to be external. I'll let Alex speak to that.
Yes, as part of the discussion around community development, Shannon's absolutely correct. Council was looking for guidance on how to interpret and evaluate proposals that came forward. You could also very easily apply this to your own decision-making. So before you embark on a new initiative, does it align well with the community development principles, or is council shooting off on its own without sufficient community support? Having said that, all of your deliberations happen in public. And so this would very clearly be a public document, and community groups coming forward could be encouraged to think about these before they arrived at the council table, so that they're well prepared for the kinds of questions council will ask.
Yeah, and I fully agree with that. The reason I ask is because I often have a community group approach me to say, I want to make a presentation to council with this ask. Do you have any guidelines for how I might want to do this? This seems very appropriate for that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I get asked that too. They're looking for just what they should be presenting on, and we don't want to give them too much, but being able to hand over something that this is kind of a guiding principle for us might help with them preparation. Councillor Smith.
I just wanted to echo the comments around development. That was something that really stood out to me too, is that this is community development. So we have talked before about how not all communities are in the same place as far as organization, strength of leadership, and that we really want to also see the opportunities to go where there's energy and interest, but maybe the development of an organization or a leader is still emerging. And I keep coming back to that word emerging, like emergent. We need to really make sure that we're not missing the opportunities to nurture community where it may not be as fully developed. And the other thing I wanted to point out was that in the policy that the mayor pointed out, they have a question on page 13 about allowing adequate time for effective relationship building. And time is also something that I think it's a factor that has become really evident to me in our work. And sometimes communities need more time to build relationships. And that shouldn't be a factor against them as we're assessing the work. There's people who come to us with ready to go, and there's people who will benefit from us walking alongside them and helping them build relationships that aren't there yet, but there is definitely the potential. Those are my comments.
Councillor Oikel.
Thank you. I certainly like this discussion guide, but I don't think that it should be just limited to for councils to use. I think that it would be very beneficial for organizations or people who think, like, let's do this. How do we go about it? What are some things we need to consider? And this guide would certainly help them to organize their thoughts prior to advancing any community project that they may have. And I would like to see this as something that's available on a card or somewheres, on a website or whatever, for community groups to consider when wanting to do a community project.
There's no motion that needs to come out of this discussion today. It was to bring forward some information from our last meeting, and it sounds like it's kind of an ongoing process. We've got some good feedback that came back from today that they can take forward, along with our Deputy CEO, who's scratching down all kinds of notes beside me. Mayor McLean-Wild, do you have a final point?
Yeah, just I think Councillor Oikel raises a really useful point in how we evolve this. I'm not sure that the same document, I like what she proposed, that we do have something, I think it ties in with what Councillor Smith is talking about too, that we have something that could help communities in developing a project that is more compatible with what we will view and how we'll assess it. If we have a kind of a guide of some sort for community development that's written for our communities as opposed for us as the decision makers, I think they should be targeted a little bit differently, and I think that would be a very useful addition to this whole process of how we're realigning our thinking around community development. So I really like that idea, but I think it isn't the same document. Elements of it are the same, but I think it could be very useful to communities that are thinking about a project.
All right, thank you both for presenting that. We're going to take a quick 10-minute recess, and when we return, we'll have our second presentation of the day. And welcome back, council members. We're going to continue with our second presentation of the morning, and we have the Nova Scotia Working Woodland Trust requests for letter of support, and we have Mary Jane Roger, Executive Director, and Michael Koloff. Hopefully I got that somewhat close. I'm used to my name being butchered myself, so I apologize. Who is a stewardship coordinator. And if you would like to have a seat, so at those mics down below, we're having some trouble with that mic today, and we want to be able to hear your presentation. So welcome to council. And for those mics, you just push the button when you're speaking.
Test. Okay, it's working. Test. Thank you for having us today. We really appreciate slotting us in somewhat last minute to share this proposal with you. So this Wednesday, we will be submitting an application to the Nova Scotia Sustainable Communities Challenge Fund for a water and wildfire resilience project. We're partnering with several municipalities, and we're hoping that Modal will be one of them. We really see this as an opportunity to identify on a property or on a parcel level risk intelligence and really creating a decision support tool both for modal staff that could be used for targeted landowner engagement. So this project would be fully funded through, if successful, through the Sustainable Communities Challenge Fund and wouldn't require any contribution or financial contribution from Modal. But we would ask if you would be willing to sign a letter of support naming Modal as a municipal partner, as well as consider providing a staff contact that we could be engaged with throughout the course of the project. So I believe I was here in March or April. So some of you might remember me introducing the Nova Scotia Working Woodlands Trust. So we are the first and only land trust in Nova Scotia dedicated to holding working forest community easements. So this is under the Nova Scotia Community Easements Act. These are unique easements that really aim to uphold the long-term stewardship of Nova Scotia's working woodlands through ecological forestry and conservation. So a working forest community easement permanently protects a woodland while keeping it actively managed and productive. So we really aim to break cycles of exploitive harvesting, subdivision, in instances where it's not appropriate. So we permit ecological forestry, such as selection management, recreation, farming, and of course, this easement stays with the property no matter who owns it. So we are really different than a traditional conservation easement. This is for people who want to see their lands protected, but also want to still live and work on them. To date, we have signed 18 easements. So that's over 1,700 hectares or about 4,000 acres across Nova Scotia. And we signed our very first easement in Modal. And I think we have 3 easements in Modal to date, as well as having quite a few in neighboring municipalities. So we really see this as a key opportunity, a new opportunity to work directly with municipalities. So I know, there are a variety of cross-sectional interests here. The forest lands that are adjacent or in municipal lands can really shape water, fire, and flood outcomes. And these are mostly in private hands. So it's important to have a variety of mechanisms available to landowners so that both the municipality can easily reach them, as well as achieving the outcomes that are a benefit for climate adaptivity and resilience. So I'm going to pass it over to Mike to talk about the proposal.
Thanks, Mary Jane. So I'm going to just say why this could be important for Modal, or why we think it could be. Climate risk modeling in Modal runs through its forests, and there are multiple pressures at stake, and there's kind of one root cause of all these things. So the first one that I'd identify is wildfire risk. This is obviously very fresh in people's minds given the events that have transpired over the last few years. So that risk is escalating rapidly across Nova Scotia's forests. And of course, that risk is highest at the fuels, homes, and infrastructure interface. And that's growing here in Modal as our district expands and grows in population, and we attract more families and businesses. The other key identification is flooding and runoff risk. So really considering how these impacts shape our water tables, how upstream forests are managed actually has a huge impact in how water arrives, how quickly, and how clean at our source water. So the management of those lands is really a key piece. Source water and infrastructure, of course, to expand on that, these forested watersheds are the first line of defense, and without parcel level information, it's difficult to target protection where it counts most, and that's really what this project aims to deliver. So, as Mary Jane mentioned, the distribution of land ownership in Modal and Lunenburg County broadly is predominantly owned by many private landowners. There's a smaller proportion of Crown and industrial holdings in our county relative to other counties in the province. So meaningful land protection requires a multifaceted approach, different models built around private landowners. And these would be models that are voluntary, tool-based, and relationship-driven. And that's where we feel that the trust can really deliver. The gap that we see is that no one currently has parcel-level intelligence on where the forest action matters the most within the municipality. So our proposal is sort of a four-piece coordinated effort. The first is a broad assessment. So this would be a GIS-based wildfire and watershed vulnerability assessment across Modal. And then a prioritization effort. This would be the parcel level identification of the private lands where stewardship delivers the greatest resilience benefit. And then equipping with tools. So the outcome would be an interactive decision support dashboard for Modal staff. This tool would be kept. And then to engage land stewards. So the trust would lead an outreach campaign that connects priority landowners with stewardship options and permanent conservation tools. We would aim to complete this work in 2027, so most likely starting in mid-December or early January 2027, and it would resolve by November 2027. So as Mary Jane mentioned too, like one of the asks would be to have a representative from council that we could engage with through this project process. And one of the big benefits is that, we have a seat at the table to really help disseminate this information and turn that into something that is useful for planning purposes, for long-term planning. So one of our core partners outside of the municipal partners for this project would be ACFOR. They are a New Brunswick-based independent forestry and environmental consulting group, and they currently serve municipalities and different conservancies across Atlantic Canada. The organization is led by professional foresters and certified forest technicians, FireSmart trained, in-house GIS and LiDAR expertise. So they're really they hold a lot of forestry and technological capacity. They currently don't have any commercial buying interest for wood products within Modal. Their planning department operates independently of any wood fiber procurement, and their biomass operations are based in New Brunswick with no sourcing here. So their advice is driven by land and community outcomes. Some of you may be familiar, they're already delivering actually in our region. So in Bridgewater at the Lunenburg County NSCC, AC4 has a 500 kilowatt biomass boiler. This heats the NSCC campus, the provincial courthouse, and the provincial building, and that displaces about 90% of fossil fuel heating. And they source that biomass through local service providers. So this isn't, like, we see them as a partner that's actually already established in the community, and they're not parachuting in per se, they're already invested here. And they really have a lot to offer through the tools that they have developed. And that's why we're working with them. I'm going to talk about the technology platform that would deliver these results. It's called Lupra Technologies. It turns models and maps into decisions and action. It's a platform with a connected view. If I would be able to plug in my computer, I could show you folks a demonstration. Would that be possible? Or I can just explain it with words. That's fine too. Yep. So basically this dashboard it's translating this fire and water risk modeling into a parcel level tool. It would be like color coded to see like where these highest risk parcels are within the municipality's watershed areas. And it's interactive, so one can click on the parcels based on their risk value, and it can make management recommendations and create connections to local service providers, with the trust being a key partner in those stewardship options. So that's kind of how we fit into it. But this tool long-term aims to connect with many service providers, so other forestry and conservation partners that might be working in the region and across the province broadly. In addition to the municipal tool, there would also be a landowner-facing tool. So this would be a shorter-term deliverable, but it gives folks who actually own this land the option to connect directly with service providers. So it helps the municipality in being able to clearly delineate these risks and where the biggest leverage points are for long-term land planning. And it also gives that same kind of empowerment to the folks that own that land, municipal or otherwise. So what Modal could receive out of this is these municipal scale risk maps, the parcel level prioritization layers, interactive decision support dashboard, a summary report for long-term adaptation planning, and of course the targeted landowner outreach that NSWWT would deliver. There's another component to this project, which is sort of a legal research component. We would be working with Juniper Law to develop a municipality-tailored working forest easement template. Because currently we only work with private landowners, but we'd like to have a more versatile tool that would give municipalities other options for conserving land long-term while still protecting priority uses. And one of the benefits to this could be basically contribute, if municipalities have a tailored easement template, it makes it possible to count municipal lands, forested lands, towards Canada's protected goals targets through the use of OECMs, which is other effective area-based conservation measures. So as you probably are aware, the federal government has a goal of 30% of our land being protected by 2030. And OECMs are a way to extend that beyond lands that are protected through traditional conservation means, but actually look at working landscapes or lands that have incidental protection just by the mechanism of the uses on them. So that would really position municipalities and Modal to be a leader in the larger conservation goals that our country has. So looking ahead, we're kind of asking for 3 concrete things. A letter of support naming Modal as a key partner, which we need before Wednesday, and a staff liaison to help shape the dashboard around the council's priority, and a seat at the table through 2027 as these results would roll out and as we develop the municipal working forest community easement template. Yeah, that's pretty much what we have, and yeah, we'd like to take any questions because I recognize that was a lot of words.
Normal, typical practices of council is that we don't make any decisions during presentation, but as you've alluded to, it is a time-sensitive matter. So, and shortly, I'll have our municipal clerk explain what our options are, but we'll do questions or comments before we get to that point. If you could just raise your hands again, because I know they went up fast. Councillor DeLong.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm very supportive of the, I'm not going to get your acronym right, but I'm supportive of the Working Woodland Trust. Yeah, I think that this does give Modal a big opportunity to be a conservation leader. I guess I don't have a question. That was a comment.
Thanks,
Councillor
Casey.
Smith.
I'm also a big fan of this approach. I don't see there being a huge dedication of resources from Modal. It's more about providing support, some staff support. Just around Act 4, I really appreciate their presence in this partnership, this collaboration. I've been watching their work. I went to a presentation on Lupra. It was really impressive. And just to highlight, you know, their work in New Brunswick, I think they've worked with over 20 municipalities on wildfire risk assessments through the New Brunswick's Fire Smart program. So they have a lot of experience working with municipalities in this space. And I really like the comment, you know, they're not parachuting in. They've been part of the forestry landscape in this area for so long, it feels to me, and so well connected through NSCC forestry, and all the people doing great work around ecological forestry in this area. And the last comment I'll make is around something that one of our strategic priorities is around economic development. And I do see this as a bit of an economic development tool because what you're doing is engaging landowners, putting them in touch with options for forestry that will help mitigate wildfire risk. And that's, I think that's a really important piece of this that aligns with our strategic priorities. And I just to wrap up around fire safety, I mean, the wildland urban interface is a very charged topic right now. Communities throughout my district are talking about it, very worried about wildfire risk. So I see support for this project as responding to their needs as well for more information and community action on this topic. Thank you.
Councillor Hubley.
Thank you. Quick question. This might be for Alex. I'm just wondering if we have the capacity in-house that we could have a staff liaison for them. I think it's a great project. I just want to make sure we can handle it.
It's not clear that I can answer that question for you today. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
My only comment would be that, first of all, we'd have to have probably a little bit better understanding of what that role as Aaliyah would be, because I don't think that was part of any of our discussions that we've had previous.
If I can add, I think at minimum, it would be someone who we could provide updates to. It wouldn't necessarily be someone who needs to play an active role. We understand that you guys have capacity limitations.
And I think in terms of the request before you today, it might be helpful to think about the grant application itself rather than what the partnership might look like. So does the project have merit? The council would like to see it go forward. You could provide that letter of support in a general sense, if that's where council's head is. And then we can work out the details of it after the grant application deadline pressure is gone.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do believe that Lunenburg County and MODL is prime for a wildfire event, and so your program is of importance. We should be looking at any of the tools that can aid in the protection against this new Canadian threat. Who is this letter made out to for the grant request? Why is the window of support so short? How long have you known the grant was available? And arriving here today sort of creates a little problem for us for being able to meet your request time. Such a support would normally come from council, which meets every 2 weeks. And are you expecting a financial commitment from another partner with the use of this letter? Is this to aid in the application of getting this grant for your program? And just tell me how these different things fit together, please.
So the way the Sustainable Communities Challenge Fund works, which is who we are asking for the funding from, is they have a window open for expressions of interest. And then once you are get through that process and they then invite you to submit an application, it's a very short window. So it's only about a 3 or 4 week window between the time that you're successful with an expression of interest to actually submitting an application. So once we were successful with our EOI, we then started the process of engaging with municipalities. We have had conversations with a couple councillors who we have connections with prior to that. And I think we originally reached out to Modal a couple weeks ago, and this was kind of the best spot to put us. So I do understand this puts you in a bit of a challenging situation in terms of timelines. I have drafted a letter of support and submitted it to the clerks so that you can follow the letter of support that I've drafted as well. So that takes a little bit of work off your plates. And you had what was the last component of your question? The overall financial commitment. So no financial commitment is required of Modal. We are asking, if we're successful in this grant, that would be covering all of the costs, as well as we have supplementary in-kind contributions that we've been making from other funding sources.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Burns.
I just wanted to say that insofar as today we give a letter of support in this, I think it's a no-brainer. It's great work. It's work that will benefit everyone in the community, and it's work that we likely won't be undertaking ourselves at a cost-effective rate. And it fits in line with everything we're trying to do with Empower organizations and community groups to do this work and to lead it themselves. So absolutely on the letter and everything else that entails, I would just sort of consider that a further discussion moving forward, but also not fundamentally opposed to it.
I don't have anybody on my list, so I'll turn it over to our municipal clerk to explain what our options are today with that letter of support.
So as the deputy mayor has indicated, you have a procedure for when you typically have presentations come to meetings, that you don't make decisions during or right immediately afterwards the presentation. It gives you time to think about it, and then it comes back at a later time if there's a report required or whatever. In this situation, this is a time-sensitive matter, as you've all heard, and if you wish to suspend your procedures rules, then you would just do that by unanimous consent, and we can certainly go ahead and make any kind of, give direction for a letter to be signed by the mayor on behalf of council. What would happen after that would we would bring the motion back to the July 28th meeting of council, and you will ratify and confirm that decision.
And just to clarify, do we need to suspend rules first and then show of hands and support? Okay,
Yeah, do your suspension.
okay. So just by a straw vote of hands, would you like to suspend our usual, what's the word? Procedures and look at this? Oh, so just to suspend procedures, please raise your hand if you're in favor. Okay,
One that's not.
one that's not.
Does it have to be unanimous?
Does.
Oh, okay then.
Okay. We don't do this often, so we're relying on staff to guide us here. Okay.
I don't want to hold the process.
Okay. Okay, so then the next kind of straw vote would just be to direction to staff to suspend, not suspend, direction to staff to,
No, you've already done the suspension.
Okay.
So now you just the.
Motion for a letter of support.
you want a
direction,
motion
the
or direction?
Just the direction.
So just if you're in favor of the direction to send that letter. Okay, and unanimous again. So that will be left in staff's hands to see that that gets done.
Thank you.
Perfect. Counselor DeLong.
Will we get a copy of the letter as it goes out?
Our municipal clerk says we'll make sure that gets included and sent to staff, a copy of that letter.
Thank you.
Oh, council, not staff. Okay. I think that kind of concludes the presentation, so thank you both for coming in today, and we wish you success in your application.
Great. Thank you so much for having us.
Perfect.
Thanks for your time, everyone.
You're welcome. Okay, next up on our agenda, we have the Planning and Development Department and 9.3.1, the Annual Emergency and Climate Change Impact Survey results. And we have Kayla presenting on that, looks like. Kayla, would it be possible to get you to sit where we're having some trouble with the mic today? We'll just get you to lower the podium again, and that way we can ensure that your voice is being picked up. While we're waiting for that to come up on our screens, for those that might be listening or coming back to the presentation later, the full report can be found in our agenda packaging, whereas the presentation will touch base on some highlights of that impact survey. We're just experiencing some technical difficulties. We should be with you shortly.
Hi, everyone. Sorry about that. We're now back. So good morning, Policy and Strategy Committee. I'm here today to present to you an overview of the Annual Emergency and Climate Change Impact Survey for 2026. This is an overview. A more in-depth summary of the findings is available in the report, which is attached to the agenda package, as well as available on the Emergency and Preparedness Engage page. The Annual Emergency and Climate Change Impact Survey was aimed at part-time and full-time residents of Modal to share their experiences and contribute insights to help Modal prepare for future impacts. The background of this survey comes from Modal's Local Climate Change Action Plan, also known as our LCAP 2030, under Category 8, Emergency Preparedness and Response. Here I'll provide an overview of how Modal engaged with residents to ensure as many full-time or part-time residents were notified of the survey and had the opportunity to partake if they wish. To do this, we utilized a variety of advertising methods to promote the survey, including the Engage website front page, Modal website front page, District of Lunenburg Digest, the municipal app, and our social media through the Facebook postings. And the engagement website previously mentioned was launched in January 2025 and is always available for Modal residents who wish to access information and resources around emergency preparedness. The survey was open to fill out from March 3rd to the 31st of 2026. The survey was available online and in paper format available at the Municipal Service Building for those who may not be able to or want to fill out the survey through an electronic device. However, no paper submissions were received and all answers reflect those taken online through the Engage website. This was the second year the survey was conducted, and here's a comparison between 2025 and 2026. We received a total of 91 submissions in 2025, and in 2026, the number of submissions increased to 250, representing a 174.7 increase. Last year, we received 3 photos in relation to damage of property and infrastructure that residents felt comfortable sharing. In 2026, we've seen an increase in photo submissions to 9, representing a 200% increase compared to 2025. Moving on to the results of the 2026 survey, we started with questions related to demographic. So we asked how long they have lived in the municipality of the District of Lunenburg. 66.8% of respondents responded to having lived in Modal for over 10 years. 11.2 identified as living in Modal between 6 to 10 years, 19.6% of respondents said 1 to 5 years, and 2.4 stated they have been living in Modal for less than a year. The trend of having over half of respondents living in Modal for 10 plus years in 2026 is similar to the 2025 survey, where responses mainly reflected the perspective of long-term residents. The second question was asked, are you a full-time or seasonal resident? Most respondents identified as being full-time residents at 90%, with 10% stating they are seasonal residents. Similar to the 2025 results, this means the results of this survey largely reflect the experiences and preparedness needs of year-round residents. We then asked what age group do they fall under. Nearly 80% of respondents identified as being 50 years of age or older. This is a significant share in this category and is like the results of the first survey conducted in 2025. Seeing this as the second year with similar results, future surveys could consider additional outreach to younger adults, families, and other underrepresented groups to capture a broader range of perspectives in Modal. We then asked which best describes your household. Looking at household composition, just over half of respondents lived in two-person household, making this the most common household type. Single-person households were the next largest group, representing about 18% of respondents. Households that included seniors aged 65 and older accounted for a small number of respondents. A small number of respondents selected other, reflecting a range of living arrangements, including multi-generational households, households with adult dependents, and households that included a person with disability. Only one preferred not to answer this question. Next, we asked them around climate change concerns, and we asked what issues were they most concerned about. So residents were asked about their main climate change concerns. Extreme weather events were selected most often, accounting for just over 20% of respondents. Wildfire risk was the second most common at 14%, and this concern has increased compared to 2025. Residents also expressed concerns about impacts on local wildlife and ecosystems, water and food security, rising sea levels, and extreme temperature fluctuations. Overall, these results show that residents are thinking more about immediate risks, such as severe weather and wildfires, and longer-term impacts on the environment and community. A small number of respondents selected other. Their comments included concerns about infrastructure, population growth, littering, economic and political impacts, and broader social issues. Some respondents also expressed skepticism and disagreement about climate change and related concerns. Next, we asked, have they or their household personally experienced any of the following because of climate change impacts? Drought was the highest household impact chosen in 2026 at 29.7%, followed by property damage at 27.4%. In the 2025 survey, the answer none was the highest chosen answer for this question and is now in third, suggesting there was an increase in households who have experienced some or multiple impacts described here. Then health-related concerns was reported at 6.8%, 4.7% selected other, and these responses included comments around climate change anxiety, flooded roads, extreme temperatures, storms, and strong winds, followed by the loss of income or employment and property damage. This year, we included follow-ups to question 6 to gain a better understanding of the impacts residents face. The following questions, numbered 6.1 to 6.5, provide a clearer picture of the challenges brought up. These questions only apply to those who chose the appropriate category in question 6, so these answers do not reflect all 250 respondents. For 6.1, we asked, has their household experienced a private well running dry or significantly reduced water availability due to drought or changing climate conditions? The main highlights from this question include nearly half, at 46.5% of residents who responded to this question said their household experienced significantly reduced water levels in their well, and another 21.8% reported their wells running completely dry. We then asked, what type of property damage have you or your household experienced due to climate-related events? Storm or wind damage was the most common reported type of property damage, representing 41.9% of responses. Flooding or water damage was the second highest at 31.1%. Other reported impacts include downed trees, power outages, driveway washouts, and increased invasive species challenges. We then asked, what type of health impacts have you or your household members experienced related to climate-related events? Respiratory problems were the most common reported health impact, followed by other comments. These comments included concerns around Lyme disease and ticks, then mental health impacts, heat-related illness, and one preferring not to say. We then asked, how did climate-related impacts affect your household or income? And among the residents who reported income or employment impacts, the most common issue was increased expenses that reduced net income. Other impacts included temporary work disruptions, reduced work hours, and business revenue loss. For this question, we asked what type of displacement or relocation occurred. A total of 10 respondents reported experiencing some form of displacement or relocation. Most respondents reported temporary evacuations lasting days to weeks, while the remainder reported permanent relocation. On to residential preparedness, we asked what measures, if any, have they taken to prepare for climate change impacts. The most common actions were backup generators or battery storage at 18.8%, followed by home installation improvements at 16.4%, and emergency supply kits at 14%. Other preparedness actions included native plant landscaping, rainwater harvesting systems, renewable energy systems, and flood-proofing measures. We then asked how confident are they in their preparedness for the impacts of climate change. Most respondents described themselves as somewhat confident in their preparedness for impacts, representing 74% of responses. 16.8% of respondents felt confident and well prepared, while 9.2% said they were not confident and felt completely unprepared. We then asked, what challenges are you facing that affect your ability to prepare for the impacts of climate change? The top barrier was financial constraints at 44.1%, with other barriers mentioned, such as lack of information or awareness, limited access to resources or services, and lack of community support or engagement. The other category included comments such as barriers with age, mobility, limited support, lack of time, poor cell service, wildfire risk, coastal erosion, vulnerable roads, and uncertainty about what actions to take. Next, we asked, do you feel you have access to adequate information to prepare for climate change impacts? Most respondents said they have some access to information on preparing for climate change, representing over half. Another 24% said they fully have access to information, and 13.3% said they feel they don't have access to adequate information. With 75% of respondents indicating some or none, more information for residential preparedness could be beneficial. Moving on to municipal action, we asked, would you be interested in participating in community programs related to climate change? Most respondents expressed potential interest in community climate programs, with a 62.4% selecting maybe, and another 21.2% indicated yes, with 14.8% saying no. Other responses that were mentioned, including participating in the tree giveaway program and limitations to participation due to chronic health challenges. For stories, we asked, do you have a story you would like to share about your experience around climate change impacts? This question was optional, and meaning participants had the option to skip this question. A total of 30.8% of respondents provided an answer. The responses were broken into themes, with the first category representing the most common, and down the columns they've become less common of an answer. A further in-depth description of what was written in these themes is available in the report. The themes are as followed: drought and private well water security, coastal flooding, erosion and sea level rise, power outage and communication concerns, food security, gardens and agriculture, health, aging, mobility and stress, household adaptation and preparedness actions, environmental change, biodiversity, pests, also known as invasive species, and mixed views and skepticism. Some quotes have been included here from some of the stories that were submitted. Last fall, I had to carry water for everything in my house for 2 months. I'm soon 73, and I will not be able to do this again. In 2025, extreme drought conditions and wildfires brought on climate anxiety, experienced for the first time. We then asked, what do you believe are the most important actions the municipality could take to address climate change? Similar to the format in question 12, the question was optional, meaning participants had the option to skip this question. A total of 74% of respondents provided an answer. The responses were broken into themes, with the first category representing the most common, and down the columns they become less common of an answer. A further in-depth description of what was written in these themes is available in the report. The themes are as followed: coastal protection and development controls, emergency preparedness and wildfire, not wildlife response, water security and drought preparedness, infrastructure and road resilience, clear communication, education, renewable energy and energy resilience, natural environment and land protection, transportation and local resilience, governance, enforcement, and coordination. Some ideas have been quoted here that were submitted. Municipalities can tackle climate change through mitigation, adaptation, zoning, and renewable energy. Public education for community fire protection, water conservation, and restorative landscaping. Each year we ask if residents would like to share any photos to show what they have been experiencing. A total of 9 were submitted. Here we have a dry stream bed or water course beneath the bridge showing low water conditions. The next photo, we have coastal shoreline showing erosion, fallen trees and debris along the water's edge. And then the next photo, we have a close-up image of an invasive species on vegetation. The next photos show high water levels around the dock and shoreline of infrastructure. The next is a roadway flooding after heavy rainfall with water covering the road and surface. And the next is water levels along a lake or shoreline area, showing conditions that may contribute to shoreline flooding, erosion, or impacts to nearby natural areas. And these last row of photos is a washout of a driveway or a roadway showing exposed rocks and erosion. The next is a shoreline property showing debris, sediment, and damage on a deck or waterfront area. And then the last photo is high-level water areas around a waterfront building, showing flooding close to the structure and surrounding shoreline. It's always important to evaluate a survey to address any limitations that could be addressed to improve future questionnaires. Not all respondents provided their postal codes. This included 66 respondents, which means we cannot verify if those 66 respondents reside in Modal. This question was mandatory at the beginning of the initial posting. However, we received some emails from residents explaining that they were unable to properly include their postal code online. To help navigate this limitation, future surveys could require their community names, such as they're from New Germany, rather than a postal code. In conclusion, this year's survey saw an increase in community participation and supported the continued effort to gain a clearer picture in how Modal residents are experiencing climate-related events. Compared to 2025, more respondents reported direct household impacts like drought, property damage, and water availability, and many residents have taken steps to prepare. However, levels varied, and notable barriers included financial constraints, limited access to resources or services, information gaps, and community support. The results from these surveys will help inform climate action, emergency response and planning, and education topics to support community programs across Modal. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I really like in the photo submissions, it shows one extreme of drought to the other with high water levels, which really outlines, we don't know what we're going to get. We have to be ready for one end and the other. So, questions, comments for Kayla? Councillor DeLong.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm really happy to have these results. It gives a lot of weight to the work that we're doing in terms of climate change. My question, I somehow deleted. Okay, my question is about the municipal action category and question 13, where residents gave suggestions for what might be helpful. Do you have any suggestions what type of programming or education the municipality can and should offer to these residents?
One of the biggest things that came up during this was wildfire risk. Very concerned about being surrounded by trees and the climate anxiety around that. Maybe pushing our Wildlife Smart program could be beneficial, just to provide kind of like, here's how far your tree should be away from your property. Those kinds of instances could be really helpful. Another thing, which is what we're doing, is the water supply upgrade program. I've gotten comments in this saying how helpful it actually was for residents to be able to have that as an option for when they have no water. And that was especially why I wanted to create the dry well question, because I wanted to really get an idea of how many people are really struggling with the idea of having running well water.
And just to clarify, I think you said Wildlife Smart, but is that
Yeah,
Fire Smart?
Yeah, Fire Smart, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
And follow up to your comment, Councillor DeLong, it really puts things into perspective how many one roads in and out places we have in the municipality. Yeah. Councillor Oikel.
Thank you. I'm so glad that you have the comparison from last, and because it shows that climate change and the things that are happening are still very relevant and very concerning to people, and it should be for us as well, to be able to support and help our residents. And once again, I think we really need to ramp up our work, meaning R for resilience, A for adaptation, M for mitigation, and P for preparedness. Yay!
Getting that in again. Next is the T-shirts. Councillor Smith.
Thank you so much. I echo what others are saying about how good it is to have this feedback gathered, because it does really echo what we hear on the ground in our communities every day. The climate emergency is here and people are feeling the effects. Just around the survey itself, no written submissions is a bit of a, room for improvement, I think. And demographics, which, I think you're aware of both of those, but just some suggestions. Certainly libraries are a great place to have written copies of a survey available. And they are family spaces where we might pick up a few more people of, working age and maybe some youth. And I think it would be good to dig down into, who are the partners who might help us move this survey into their networks. And also talk about how important it is for our planning, because, municipalities do a lot of the frontline work as far as climate change. So I would love to talk about that more, about which, partners we could reach out to in terms of getting the survey pushed out to some of those demographics we're missing. But overall, I really love it. And one thing that always really sticks with me are the stories. So the quotes I really love hearing the quotes. When people, you hear things in people's own voice, those illustrations are wonderful. So well done.
Thank
It's
you.
a great tool.
Mayor McLean-Weil.
I don't want to be the wet blanket on this, but it is only 1% of our population responded. So that, I think we have to put that in some context. I don't think that the direction is wrong in terms of the recommendations, but I think with 1%, it is a snapshot, and we have to put that in the context of it being a small percentage of the population. But I'm not surprised that wildfire and drought issues surfaced as the top issues, and I think that does confirm the things that we already know. So I guess that's a valuable piece, but I think we have to make sure we have this in the right context of numbers. And it is a snapshot, but there are other ways we need to reach into the community as well. And I think the question that's been raised around community programming and what this might say about our next initiatives, that we can take some direction from that.
Councillor Burns.
I just wanted to say, often the issues that I'm hearing about in this, people talk about it in relation to climate, but it's really intriguing to me that people are really talking about infrastructure and things that are already largely within our scope of what we should be looking at when we're looking at dry wells, when we're looking at drought, when we're looking at concerns about that, when we're looking at concerns about flooding and how we're future-proofing building to prevent against that, and what kind of regulations we're putting in place to try and minimize that in the future. And when we're looking at wildfire management, there's a lot there. And I know that this was a climate change survey, and that a lot of times when we talk about climate change, the term itself becomes a lightning rod for a lot of energy for a lot of people with a lot of beliefs. But what's really intriguing to me here, and absolutely correct on small sample sizes, and it might just be the nature of the development going in my area. But these are a lot of things I hear about it, and I don't really hear about them from a specific climate lens. I hear about it as this is the concern I have about the neighborhood moving forward lens. So good to see that, and good to see that we've captured that, and hopefully we can continue to put that lens on things.
Councillor Oikel.
Yes, I just want to comment on that the mayor is correct, that it is a very small percentage, and very small. However, we need to also keep in mind, for those that may not know, that in the previous council, the previous 4 years, we did a lot of surveys, and they were over quite a length of time, and the percentages were even lower. And this was only for 30-some days or 20-some days. And so I'm very encouraged that 250 people took the time within a 30-day March time period to fill out the survey and to do it, considering other years, what we have had for when we did surveys for 3 to 6 months.
Okay. Thank you, Kayla, for bringing that forward. We have no mayors, deputy mayors, councillor matters, so this concludes our regular agenda for this morning. We will now get a motion to move in camera, and I see Councillor Burns has put that on the floor, seconded by Councillor Hubley. All those in favor? We are now in camera. And this concludes the Policy and Strategy Committee meeting today on Tuesday, July 21st, and I'll call this meeting adjourned.